My guest is Leigh Steinberg, iconic sports agent, best-selling author, philanthropist. Steinberg has represented more than 300 professional athletes, including 8 number one draft picks, 64 first-round picks, 12 Pro Football Hall of Fame inductees. He has also directed more than $1.2 billion towards charitable causes. In his new book, The Comeback, a playbook for turning life setbacks into victories, Steinberg opens up about his struggle with alcohol addiction, the journey to recovery, and his return to the top of the sports world. The Comeback is currently available through Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Leigh, thanks so much for joining me on Sports Business Radio. How are you?
I'm great. My pleasure.
So I want to start with the NFL draft. It just took place, so let's start there. You, as I just outlined, have mentored so many players and served as agent to so many players. You know, it's a two-way street. They're not just looking to hire an agent. You're looking to hire a client. When you were looking at clients, because you had such a great track record with good human beings too, what are the traits that you look for when you wanted to sign a client?
So I wanted athletes to be role models and understand the power that they have to trigger imitative behavior. So I would lay out for them whether they were interested in going back to the high school and setting up a scholarship, or work with the church or Boys and Girls Club at the university campus, endow some form of a give back that would bond them with that university community. And then at the pro level, set up a charitable foundation with leading business figures, political figures, and community leaders to execute a program. So that's Ward Dunn putting the 220th single mother and family into the first home alone by making the down payment, or Patrick Mahomes with his 15 in the Mahomes. So I look for self-starters for athletes that had a pristine work ethic. And importantly, from a talent standpoint, what did they do in adversity? When this quarterback throws a couple interceptions, the crowd's booing, the center's looking at him like he must be on hallucinogens for his play calling. What does he do then? Can he compartmentalize, adopt a quiet mind, tune out extraneous input, and elevate his level of play in critical situations? So those I tried to profile, we might be receptive to that approach.
You've been doing this a long time. I think athletes have changed from the days of Troy Aikman, who I've had on this show, to modern times with a Patrick Mahomes or, even quarterbacks that were just drafted in this most recent draft, like Fernando Mendoza. How do you communicate differently with today's athlete versus the athlete of 30 years ago?
Well, of course, NIL has changed everything, because instead of being able to talk to a 21 or 22-year-old at the college level, they've already made a decision at 16 about a marketing director. So that makes it difficult if you don't want to spend time talking to 15-year-olds. But the athletes just are evocative of the modern age. They grow up with social media. They understand the multiple platforms of content supply. They're into branding themselves. Obviously, they have shorter attention span because they've grown up on big screen computers and fast cutting and sound, which attenuates attention span.
Well, and it seems like because of NIL, like you just outlined, they're coming in, and especially quarterbacks, you read about someone like Ty Simpson, who could have gone back to college for another year and made money in college, or do you go to the pros? That's a factor that, again, 30 years ago, even 5 years ago, athletes weren't allowed to make money through NIL, and now that's a consideration.
Well, so you had a number of players who could have come out this year, the Oregon quarterback, for example, but they're sitting very comfortably with $1, $2, $5, $10 million. And so they can choose to stay longer on campus. And that's one of the positive effects of what otherwise has been sort of a disaster.
How do you typically meet a client? Is it through an introduction? Is it a family member? Are you proactively going after some clients? How does that work?
So most athletes that I'd be interested in have their parents as screeners.
Okay.
They were propping first to the parent, and you may have a meeting with the parents where the athlete's not even there, and you may not ever meet the athlete until after the season. And so it's bonding with the parents, it's sharing values with them, and they're doing their due diligence. So they have a list of questions so comprehensive that you could be confirmed as Secretary of State afterwards.
I'm sure. Yeah, they're probably very protective. Let's talk about the draft a little bit. I'm interested in the process of, okay, you sign a client, you know the draft is coming up, you've got the combine, the player is being interviewed by the teams, they're doing background checks. Now, from where you sit, what are you doing to get your client ready for the draft?
So the first thing we're doing is sending them off to training. And so in January and part of February, they're getting advanced nutrition. They're Someone's working with them on the 5 testables that'll be at the combine, how fast you can run a 40, how many times you can bench press 225 pounds, a vertical leap, a horizontal leap, and a 3-cone ladder drill. So you're preparing them for that. You're also preparing them for the one-on-one interaction they'll have at the combine or pro scouting day with the team. So we'll bring in an ex-general manager to prepare them for what the questions are going to come up. And you want the player committed to football. You want them prepared to do plays on a chalkboard. There's character screening and background screening. So you're carefully assessing each part of the scouting system, whether it's training, all-star games, the combine, pro scouting day back on campus, to think about how you can assuage whatever fears teams might have and emphasize your best points. By the time you get to the draft Thursday night, hopefully I've interacted with enough teams and they've been honest, as long as they don't cross-fertilize the information, so that we have someone well prepared for the hot teams that could take them. You don't know exactly where in the round you'll go, but you do know that, and that can avoid the case of the plummeting draft pick. All I had to see on Thursday night was that Ty Simpson was at the draft. And that meant that they must have known that were teams that would take him, because otherwise, if he were to fall to the second round, then they make a storyline on ESPN, the case of the plummeting draft pick. And it can be embarrassing and distorting as to what his future career will be.
So gathering that intel is got to be so important so you can advise your client. But then, like you said, are the teams being on the up and up with you and telling you, hey, I'm taking your guy in the first round. So like you said, he's not sitting there on TV for an entire round like someone like Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson, and that becomes the storyline.
Or Shadur Sanders last year.
Right. Yes, you're right.
So teams are honest as long as you keep the information confidential. So after 52 years of doing this, I've got fairly close relationships with owners and team executives, and they're going to have to see me next year and next year and next year. So while they may be misrepresenting to the public, there's a generalized amnesty for NFL executives when it comes to truth telling before the draft. I mean, you can't believe anything because they're not telegraphing their intentions in a way that other teams can pick up. So if a general manager died and went up to heaven and St. Peter was there, And St. Peter said, well, that's the most egregious sin that you committed on earth. And he said, well, I misled everybody on their true intentions were for the draft. St. Peter would say, come right in.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, so now the player gets drafted. They've got life-changing money in their pocket. Maybe not as much as it used to be because of NIL. They already probably come in with some money. But how do you help get them acclimated with their new team so that they're able to A, fit into the new environment, and B, you're probably looking for a house and like you're moving to your new city. So it's not only affecting the football side, it's affecting your personal side as well.
So first of all, we'll prepare a player with the most likely teams for a little synopsis about the city, the history of the team, who the owner is, who the execs are, who the incumbent players are. And when it comes to the financial planning aspect, that's usually done by separate people who are financial planners. And so you want the player to have a financial plan, a budget, understand the tax system. You want someone to help him make prudent decisions on where they're going to live, how much money they're going to spend. So we have that built in at the start. And the best preparation is the best tool to prevent problems. You don't want a player to sign power of attorney over to a financial planner.
Right.
That's been the genesis of fraud.
Yeah. I'm interested in your relationship with Patrick Mahomes. You've done such a great job for him. He was a draft day trade. Kansas City trades up to get him. I don't know if they were on your list of teams that he might go to, but boy, has that been an amazing partnership between you, Patrick, and the Kansas City Chiefs. How did you meet Patrick and become his agent?
So his parents were doing interviews. They're from Tyler, Texas. And so I met with his father, Pat Sr., who's a former baseball player, and his mother, Randy. And so we probably met with them 2 or 3 times, again, not really knowing Patrick till the season was over. So they've got 1,000 choices of anybody they can pick, but it was a values match. And Randy told me yesterday that when I started talking about second career, avoiding concussions, and issues like that, she'd not heard them before. It was all about the money. And so we matched on that standpoint. Of course, Patrick was a reflection of his parents.
Yeah. You helped him sign a 10-year, $450 million contract, one of the biggest contracts in NFL history. And I've got to ask you this because I can see the pros and the cons of 10 years. 10 years, you've got security, you got the 450 in the bank. Like, there's nothing wrong with $450 million. 5 years, you get to change while the market changes. You get to go back to the table. There's new economics in place. I'm always interested when speaking with an agent like yourself in the philosophy of 10 years versus 5 years or something shorter that allows for market changes.
Well, Patrick can speak for his own motivation. I would just say hypothetically, each player will have different values. And there are players who value winning and have a supporting cast and getting to the Super Bowl. And the advantages of having a strong team around a player is that he's got a much better chance to get there. And if you can get to the Super Bowl and maybe win the MVP, it's a branding marketing bonanza. And so there's that. Second of all, when you sign a 10-year contract, it's with the understanding that there'll be multiple extensions, maybe as much as one a year, where the team will need cap relief. And so we'll restructure the contract. So we're in a long-term contract, that indicates a real commitment by the team and the player, but it's not as if every term of that contract will end up, it's in the being exercised. It's in the interest of the team. They constantly go to the big earners, and since all salary counts against the cap, when they hit a year where they're $40-50 million, the team will redo that, give them a signing bonus, and sign them to an extension.
I love what Patrick is doing. You just talked a few minutes ago about, it's more than just a football player. What are you doing in the community? What are you doing in your second career when you're done? You've helped him set himself up nicely. He's a part owner of the Kansas City Royals. He's invested in the soccer team in Kansas City as well. You can already see him preparing for his post-career while he's still playing. I think that's great.
But we put together a plan. Now, my former partner, Chris Cabot, has done a lot of the work. And there was a plan to mentor Patrick through. And then, for example, on endorsements, I've always thought that you ought to take it easy at the beginning of the career instead of being on every billboard, because he didn't start his first year, and then the second year he did, and he was MVP. But before that, he hadn't been on every billboard. I think that it puts so much pressure on a player. Baker Mayfield was an example of someone who was heavily marketed. But you have this adjustment cycle that has, it just takes time. It takes seeing the field over time. Patrick was unusual because he goes out his first year and he's MVP. So you couldn't really expect or prepare for that.
You've worked with Troy Aikman, Steve Young, Ben Roethlisberger, Warren Moon, Steve Bartkowski, so many people, as we mentioned at the top of the interview. Is there a common trait that they all share?
That trait is what I said. In adversity, they blossom. In adversity, when everything looks apocalyptic and it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, they see it. And so in all of those people, they all have great work ethics. What you see on the field is just the tip of a preparatory iceberg. And they, again, are able to keep an optimistic outlook even when the game's not reflecting it. And so many of the games in football now are coming down to the fourth quarter, the last drive, or the last play. So 30% are blowouts, but the rest of them seem remarkably to come down to the very end. So what do you do then? What do you do in those circumstances?
Mm-hmm. You've been around football for a long time. Like you just said, your 52nd NFL draft. The NFL is talking about going to 18 games, and they're playing more and more international games. I understand. We do this show. The root of most of these decisions is in money. So there's more money, the more games you play and the more international games you play. What are your thoughts as someone who has worked with elite NFL players on whether or not it's healthy for them to play 18 games?
I don't think it is healthy. And the reality is football's a traffic accident on every play. Mm. The body just gets worn down, and it's physically draining, and I think it would cause more injuries. I think that it foreshortens careers. Because that 18th game is coming at the end of what already is a long, long season. So I'm not a fan. As the foreign play, I understand they want to market and everything, but they have to analyze what the effect is of going on 12, 14-hour flights and jet lag and the rest of it, and how that fits into the rest of the schedule that the team's going to play. In other words, it takes a toll.
Yeah. I want to ask you about your book, The Comeback, as we said, out in bookstores now. You've written a lot of books. Why was this one important? I know it's a real personal book for you, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that book.
So about 20 years ago, I struggled with alcohol, and I had to break denial and realize I had a problem and then figure out what to do to recover. And in life, inevitably, it could be financial problems, it could be health problems, it could be marital or relationship problems, it could be addiction. And these things set us back. And at some point, inevitably, you may face that in your own life. And so the question is not whether it's going to happen, it's how do you respond? And so I wrote my own experience about how I came back. And then I took stories of Troy Aikman and Steve Young and Rome and what struggles they had that people probably don't know a lot about and how I overcame them. So my hope is that if someone's out there still struggling, that they'll be able to find some motivation in this book.
Yeah, well done. Troy Aikman writes the foreword of the book. And like I said, I had him on in December. And I don't know if there's a better guy out there and someone who knows more football. I'm not sure who it is. I'm a big Troy Aikman fan after talking to him.
He's great. And I was so grateful to him. And when I was going through the experience, people like Troy never gave up on me. I just celebrated 16 years of continuous sobriety. So I thought it was time. I'd written Winning with Integrity, which was a book about the negotiating process and how to be more effective. And I wrote The Agent, which was an autobiography. And then I read a book with two doctors on concussion and trying to bring awareness to the problems there. So I thought it was time to be transparent and make and hopefully people can learn from my experience.
Good for you. No, well done. And I tip my cap to you for writing that and being transparent. So, Leigh, you're 77 years old now. You're still going to the draft and going strong. How much longer do you want to do this?
I don't see a logical end to it. I still have about 14 players I co-represent, but I'm working on concussion. We do an agent academy to train the next generation of younger people that want to be sports professionals. I've been a big proponent of the new modalities of biomed and how they can enhance players' life. And that's things like stem cells, blood light, nanobi, that heal players quicker and pick up energy in critical situations. So life's still exciting, and we just keep rolling.
Good for you. I love all that you're involved with. All right, last question. I know you're asked about this all the time, but my audience is going to want me to ask you about this. The movie Jerry Maguire. You were the inspiration for the movie. Tom Cruise is the star. Cameron Crowe wrote the movie, put it together. How did that come about where Cameron Crowe approaches you and says, "Hey, Leigh, I'm doing a movie on a sports agent. I want you to be the inspiration." Walk us through that story, if you would.
It was 1993, and Cameron Crowe, who was a writer-director, I knew he had written a book called Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yes.
I forgot the movie was hilarious. So, and he was a big progenitor of the rock scene. and in Seattle, the grunge music scene, and written for Rolling Stones. So I thought this would be interesting. So he started following me around for about a year and a half. And he went to the NFL draft with me in '93 when Drew Bledsoe was the first pick. He came up to the press conference that we had in New England with Bill Parcells. He came to the league meetings that year where I was walking around free agents. He came to pro scouting day. He came to a series of games with me. And as we were going through it, I told him stories, lots and lots of stories. And he went off and wrote the script. And then as technical advisor, I had to vet the script to make sure that the look of it was palpable to sports fans, that the dialogue was not stilted and cliched. And then I had the actor Cuba Gooding Jr. come down with me to the Super Bowl. Cameron assigned him to me, and we made him pretend he was a wide receiver client of mine all week, and he hung out with Desmond Howard on the Monty Tumor. I actually had to show the quarterback in the film, played by Jerry O'Connell, how to throw a spiral because he had gone to NYU and they didn't have a football program. And so it's been 30-year anniversary this year. And I rarely walk through an airport. I mean, it happened on the way back from the draft, where someone didn't line up, or if I go to a restaurant and say those four words, which start with "show me the," boom.
Well, and you and Troy Aikman, correct me if I'm wrong, are in one of the last scenes of the movie where Roy Firestone is interviewing Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character, and you and Troy make a cameo at the end of the movie.
We do, not to quit my day job.
Hey, that's the least they can do is put you in the movie. If you went to all the trouble to be the inspiration and vetting the script and, probably being a producer on the movie.
I went on to do a movie with Oliver Stone called Any Given Sunday. And on that one, I worked with Al Pacino and Cameron Diaz and some of the actors. And then I did a baseball movie with Kevin Costner called For the Love of the Game.
Loved it.
And I've got current projects now that I'm sworn to secrecy about where I'm helping in the same way.
See, this is good. I think all movies that are trying to portray something need someone from that industry, in this case, sports, who can keep them honest on the script and make sure that it's real. Were you pleased? I'm assuming you were with how Jerry Maguire turned out and Any Given Sunday.
Yes. In Any Given Sunday, I was down in the locker room showing them how to pop their shoulder pads. But I thought that Jerry Maguire humanized sports agents for people so they could see a little bit of the true caring that goes into it, that it's not just bits and money, that there's real relationships that happen.
Yeah. Leigh Steinberg, iconic sports agent, best-selling author, philanthropist, and clearly consultant to many of the great sports movies of the last 30 years. Thanks so much for joining me on Sports Business Radio. This is a pleasure. Congrats on a great career. The book is fantastic, and just excited to see all that you're doing.
Thank you, Brian. I enjoyed it.